Okay, June already. Can you believe it? I have no idea where the year's going, but we are in June already and we are at our June email surgery. This is our first one at the new time, so hopefully this works quite well for everybody. It's great to see so many of you here, so thank you very much. I'm going to keep an eye on the waiting room in case anybody else comes in, but I think we're okay at the moment. So let's jump in because, as always, we've got lots for you today. So the first thing that I want to do is just give you a little reminder on a couple of bits so that you're up to date with what we're doing and what's going on. And then we're going to do a little bit of learning today. So we've got a little bit of information about psychology in email and a few tips for you on what to look out for and how to start thinking a little bit deeper about the elements that we're putting into our emails, whether that's our copy, our images, our colors, the way things are presented. It's well worth thinking about how people are going to actually digest that information. And then I wanted to talk to you about email analytics, because I always get questions about the reports that I send over post-send. So I wanted to give you an overview of the key metrics that you're going to see in those reports, and you have been seeing in those reports, what they mean and what you can do with them afterwards. And of course, as always, this is your time. So please do feel free to stop me at any time. We don't have to do a Q&A just at the end. So stop me for questions at any point. But if there are any at the end as well, then we should have time for that. So how does that sound to everyone? Is that all okay? Brilliant. Okay, let's jump in. So let's do our little reminder section today. So the first thing is to make sure that you've all got access to monday.com. So we're using this to track our one-to-many emails, which at the moment are sent through Marketo. So within this system, you will see for each of your different teams what emails you have happening at the moment, whether they're in production, whether they're awaiting briefs, whether they've got a PO confirmed, and you're all connected into each of those tasks. So you're all tagged against your individual tasks. Now, within there, if you click on the little icon, the little speech bubble icons there, you can actually click into the task and leave me notes. So if you need to tell me something, if you want to ask a question, feel free to do it there against each individual email so that we've got it together. Please do still send me files and briefs via email, but this is a great way for us all to keep up to date with what's going on. Really simple to use. It's literally log in, find your team, have a look at your emails, and you can click in and leave notes if you want to. That's pretty much the extent of it. So don't be scared by the new technology that I'm bringing into play here. It should be really simple. And I just wanted to make your lives easier so that we don't have to keep going back and forth and asking for updates on where things are. We can start to keep some of that messaging in here and clear your inboxes a little bit. Any questions on that? If anyone hasn't got access, please drop me an email and you'll get added to the board. Everyone happy? Okay, brilliant. So next up on our updates is around the modular templates. So I've showed you the modular templates on a few of these sessions before, and I wanted to show you what happens when we take those modules, we brand them to your teams, and we actually then use them for those live messages. So we've got 3 examples on the screen from 3 different teams, all doing slightly different things or in slightly different ways. So we've got 2 webinar emails that you can see there. And then we have, which the Vetlury team I'm sure would want me to say is not approved yet. We have a Vetlury newsletter that's going out that is a slightly longer form email that has different sections of content on different things. So it's a very newsletter style piece of information that's going out. So these are being used in the wild. They are starting to go out. And I wanted to show you just a little sneak peek of what can happen when we make changes to our designs. Now, I'm going to show you an email that went out that was very similar in terms of the content. We were advertising the same thing. Now, on the left-hand side and the stats at the top, you can see one design of the email sent to one audience. This was through another database audience. And on the right-hand side, that same webinar being advertised, sent to our Gilead audience. Sorry, let me restart that bit. I confused myself there. Both sent to the Gilead audience, but we have one design one way and one design using the modular template, both sent to the Gilead audience. Apologies. So what we see on the design on the left is a lot more condensed design. There's a lot more all in a shorter space. It's not as spread out. It's not as broken down into sections. And we saw what we're looking at here is the engagement. So we're looking at the click to open rate. So of the people that opened the email and got into it, what percentage of those then went on to actually click on that call to action? So this one got a 25.3% click to open rate. So that's the one on the left, the design on the left. Now, switching to sending on a modular design, we then achieved a 34.4% click to open rate. Now, partially that could be to do with content, although the open rates were very similar. And it was pretty obvious in those subject lines what it was in those emails, and you've got the difference between them. But actually, once people were in the emails engaging with the content and the layout, we got a much higher engagement rate on that slightly more spaced out, bringing people down to that call to action. We've got that kind of headline, main information, call to action, main information, call to action, and then we break down the panelists. So we've got a much more structured element. So could be the design, could be that once they were in, they were really engaged with the content, but the open rates are similar between the two. So by making tweaks, by making it easier for people to read it, by spreading it out, by making sure that we've got key information called out, we can certainly help people to engage better with our emails. Does that make sense? So same audience, both webinars, yes, slightly different webinars, but in the same series. And we're looking at that engagement once they're in the email. Okay, so click rate is how many people clicked based on the number of emails were sent. Same as open rate is based on the number of emails that were sent. Click to open is of those people that opened your email, how many actually did something and took your call to action. So it's really telling you how engaging your design and your content are. So it's something for us all to think about when we're looking at our emails, making sure they're really easy to read, making sure that we're breaking down our copy into short, readable paragraphs, breaking it up so that it's easy for the eye to read. Because don't forget, people don't actually read emails. I hate to break it to you, all your fantastic information, people don't actually read every single word. They skim things. They pick up key pieces of information. That's why headlines, subheadings, bolding keywords, using color on keywords in the copy is a great way to pull out those key pieces of information. And using your design to make it easily skimmable is what you want to do. Does that make sense? Everyone with me? Any questions on that? Can't see you all. Let me check.
I guess the only point is, and we've talked about this in our own individual calls, it's great to tweak designs, but we've got to be cognizant of the pressure in the approval system. You know, certainly for in HRV, and I'm sure it's the same in all business units, there is so much pressure already. So I guess trying to get the best design straight off is important. So only one approval.
Yeah, absolutely. And design is something we can tweak as we go and as we learn from results, and we can change different things. But what we're definitely thinking about here is with your modular templates, and obviously you've got one for Biktarvy, you've got this kind of structure already laid out for you. So it's just making sure that when we put our content into it, we pick those modules in the right way. So that's the great thing about the modular template, is it's done that bit for you in terms of having enough white space in areas and having things clearly laid out in sections. We've just got to make sure we continually optimize that.
Okay, can I ask a question? Because last time on the last surgery, we talked about, you did the scan we're using
Yes.
AI things, and the red tie of the guy popped out, and then
It did.
we talked about how the buttons, maybe making them red would make them much more attractive. And I can see that on both of these
Yes.
designs, it's the same color, and we haven't got any red. So will we take that learning into future emails?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we need to do is consider how we can actually A/B split test that, because we should never take something as absolutely guaranteed until we've tested it with your audience. So what we can do is take your baseline design as that starting point, get those results, and then test it against different colors, particularly something that stands out. I'm going to talk to you later about the color wheel. And if you pick an opposite color on the color wheel, that's going to have the most contrast and the most pop. So something opposite to what you're doing can work really well. But it's
most brands would have that, an opposite to pop out. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we've always got to start with a baseline, but yeah, we can absolutely take those learnings forward. And the imagery that you're talking about, I've got an example of it, exactly what you're talking about later, so that everyone can see it. And we can take that as our testing hypothesis and see if it then works for our audience. So yeah, absolutely. That's what we need to start doing. And Terry, maybe you and I need to talk about how that will work with approvals when we've got a couple of different versions of the email when we're testing. So we can certainly pick that up. Okay. So, okay, let's move on to the next section then. So I wanted to talk to you about psychology in email, and everything that we've talked about so far and the questions that have come up have all connected into this as well. So actually it's really great timing to do it, because we've got to start understanding what works and what doesn't work for our audience. So far over the year, we've been really focused on, if I'm honest, just getting stuff running for all the teams, and the teams getting things through approval and getting those emails out there. And now we can start to actually look at what's working, what's not working, and running those tests going forward. So the first thing that we need to think about is how our copy lands with people and how we actually encourage people to take those actions that we want. And I see a lot of different variety, good and not so great, in the copy that we're using, certainly on our call to action buttons. Some of us are still using click here in some cases, and it's certainly not the optimal action wording to get people to actually go through and take that action and engage. So we really need to think about how we avoid high friction words. Now, the examples on the screen, I know they're not directly relevant to you, but I wanted to give you some really obvious examples that we kind of all see every day. So something that is making them take an action, but maybe they're not sure yet. Maybe they haven't had enough build up to actually take that action. So buying something, for example, if you're on a product page and you're buying something, that's great, but maybe that's not the right wording in the email. So we need to think about how we're adapting our wording to be really benefit driven, make it really easy for somebody to take that action and not be asking for too much too soon. So learn more, discover more, see how Biktarvy works, view more details. They're not asking for too much commitment immediately, but they're also benefit driven, and they're telling you what's going to happen next. So we can think about this on sign-up forms. We can think about this in our emails. We can think about this of any call to action button that we're using on our websites. Really try to think about what is it going to actually happen? What's going to happen? What's it going to do for that person when they click the button? And how can I best describe that for them to make it enticing, but easy to do? Okay. So low friction words, don't overwhelm them and feel like they're going to have to do too much on the other side. Make it feel really easy for them. So we just need to look at the specific words that we're using: easy, benefit driven, actionable. Okay. So those specific words that we use within our call to actions, even within our headlines, are really important. But the way we structure our copy overall is really important as well. Now, how many of you have come across the AIDA marketing model before? quite a few of you probably have, some of you haven't. That's absolutely fine. So let's get us all on the same page. When we're reading our copy, however long or short it is, what we need to be doing is trying to take people through each of these actions as we're going through our words. So attention, we're grabbing their attention. Now that could be in the inbox, using your from name, your subject line, your pre-header. When they get into your email, using your headings and your subheadings. So you can use your fonts for those, obviously different sizes for those. Use that hierarchy within your email to really grab their attention. But also think about your wording within each of those areas. What is it that they want to know? What is it that's going to be important to them? How do we pull that piece of information out as our boom? Okay, you're in, I'm going to hook you in, and then I'm going to keep coming down to get your interest. Okay, so then we go into a little bit more detail. We're raising their interest. We're giving them the benefits. So again, if we think about features over benefits, we all know we've got to be focusing on those benefits. What's in it for them? How is it going to help them? How can we demonstrate the benefit for them? Once you've raised their interest, you've got to convince them that they've got a desire for what it is that you're offering. Now, whether this is to contact a rep to get a piece of information or to have a conversation about prescribing, or whether it's to sign up for a webinar, or whatever that action is, you've got to convince them that they want it enough to take their time to click on that button, that actionable benefit-driven button, and take the time to actually do whatever it is that you want them to do. Has to be desirable enough for them. Okay. And then we link them to that action. Okay. And actually driving them through to where we want them to be. So that's your kind of your general flow. So whenever you're reading your copy, think, right, are we grabbing their attention straight off? Are we doing a good job of that? Are we raising their interest and building their desire? Are they actually going to want this? Have we made it beneficial enough for them? You know, not just saying, hey, we're having a webinar next Tuesday, come and join us. You know, what's in it for them? Why should they be interested to take their time to go on that webinar? This is where we've got to start developing this content a little bit more. And those really action-driven links. Does that make sense? Any questions around that? Okay. So whenever you're reading copy, if you're writing it, if you're reading it from your agencies, just try and think to yourself, are we taking people through these actions? And you might do it multiple times. Remember how we've talked about that inverted triangle before, where you've got your rule of 3 with your heading or your subheading, key message in essence, call to action button. And you effectively repeat that down your modules as you go through more information, and you build it up. Most important information at the top, going down to the least important information at the bottom. Okay, so again, it's a structure of your content. All of those need to be thought about. And we've got to think about the emotional side, because, you know, as your reps will tell you, I'm sure people buy from people, but we've got to link in to their emotional side. We've got to be authentic. We've got to be relevant to what it is that they want to see and what they want to learn about. We've got to get that personality and that sense of community if we can, although that's a little bit more difficult in terms of what you're doing. But certainly with webinars, that's a way to bring a great sense of community together. You know, you're joining other colleagues and peers to listen to this great information from some brilliant speakers. That's a great community aspect. So we've got to think about those emotional elements and how we get those across into our emails. And if any of you haven't heard of this gentleman before, Robert Cialdini, definitely go and have a look. He's got a great book called Principles of Persuasion. And this is about different persuasion techniques that you can use in your copy to move people through to those actions that you want to take. So to build that interest, to really hone in on that desire and move people through. So very quickly, I'm going to give you a summary of these. So reciprocity is exchanging something for mutual benefit. So asking somebody to sign up for a webinar and give you their data, you're giving them that webinar and that content in return. So that's reciprocity. And then they're more likely to carry that forward and take another action afterwards. If you were giving somebody a free download, for example, when they signed up, that's reciprocity. They're giving you their data, you're giving them something in return. Okay, so it's that mentality behind it. So consistency, this kind of follows on as well, because once they've done something, they want to appear consistent in their actions. They might come and follow you on social media. They might then engage with further emails going forward. So if you take small steps with them and build up, and this is where lead nurturing comes into play. So you're giving them small actions along the way, small yeses as they go to get them to the point when they're ready to speak to a rep, for example. Okay. So liking, and the next one that I'm going to show you as well are very, very similar, but people like to say yes to people that they like. And that's again where your reps come into play. And they also like to follow what other people have done. And that's why certainly reviews and transparency are great. You know, it might be worth starting to think about from your webinars, collecting general reviews that you could use to advertise future webinars. You know, the webinars that Gilead run are always really interesting with great speakers. You know, just little snippets like that could give you a little bit of consensus to drive forward. Certainly when you have case studies and you have other doctors that are talking about things, that's what you're getting in there, is that consensus element. Authority. And this is really where we need to be building, you guys. Each of your teams, that well-known brand, the industry leader, you're giving them information, you're helping them, you're educating them. And you do that with your webinars, and you're bringing, again, that authority in with your webinars. And that's brilliant. We need to think about how we get that across your communication cycle together. And just generally in each email, in your copy, how do you bring across your authority? Scarcity, not so much for you guys, but it is the last one here in terms of these psychological elements. You'll see this a lot in shops, you know, sale ends on Saturday, last chance to buy. It's that kind of fear of missing out. But obviously that doesn't work so well for you guys. So we've really got to think about those words that we're using. Yes, obviously we've got to get all of the legal side in and make sure that we're covering that. But in amongst the legal elements, we've got to be thinking about, how is this copy actually going to land and connect with someone? How am I taking them through to drive through that AIDA model down to that action point with my wording? It's not just wording though, of course, because our brains certainly work a lot with imagery. Now, we want to make sure that our main content, our main messages in our email are in as text. But if we can support those with our imagery, and I know imagery is a touchy subject for a lot of the teams as to what you've got or not got in some cases, but certainly when you're thinking about those images, think about how you can use them to really connect and anchor and enhance that message that you want to put out there. Okay, because a lot of people do think in a very visual way. So we need to think about the types of imagery that we're using. So icons, for example, you know, I've seen some of your emails that have icons instead of bullet points. So you're actually giving a visual representation of that point. The key information is still in as text, but the icon helps to bring that to life. Certainly if it's something that they can really, really, really relate to that message. So you've got to make sure that they're connected. And things like 3D images are now a trend in email and the way that people are using these things differently. But we've got to think, how can we use this image, not just to put in an image, but to back up what we're saying in this message, to enhance it, to give another angle to it, for example. So one of the ways that we can use our imagery is to help people navigate through our emails. So in this example, I'm going to give you a zoomed in of the two top and bottom sections here. Not only have we got very clear modules, we've got almost an S-shaped design, which I'll show you another example of in a minute, where we go from left to right with the images and copy, which helps to draw people's eye down. We've got the rule of 3 and the inverted triangle. So in each and every single section, we've got a subheading. We've got the main message, we've got a call to action. We drive people down in each and every single section. But the top and the bottom are really clever. They're little mini arrows. They're not really obvious, but they draw the eye down. So on that first one, it brings you from that headline up at the top and the logo down into the first section. You automatically go into the second section because it's in the S-shaped design. And then as you hit the third section in the middle, again, you've got that arrow at the bottom drawing you down to that recovery menu at the bottom of the email. Very subtle, but those little design cues draw the eye down. So here's another example. Again, really clear modules. Let me zoom in on a middle section for you. Really clear modules, images left to right, rule of 3 happening in each of those sections, and it leads from one to the next. Okay, so it's really, really clear. So you see how that works. And all of these, by the way, all of this is possible in your modular template. You've got modules that can help you achieve this really easily. So we've got the facility to do this for you. We'd need the images and we'd need the copy, but we've got the layout ready for you. Okay, so we're drawing people's eye down. At each section, we're drawing them to the call to action. Okay, we've got those attention grabbing headlines. So think about how we can use the design, and we have great layouts. We can put them in lots of different ways. We can bring in custom modules if we need to adapt those layouts within your same design way. Okay. So think about your wording, think about your imagery, think about the colors that you use. So this links into what Terry was asking about earlier. So this is the color wheel that I mentioned. So a lot of the time brands like to stick within their brand colors. And I completely understand why, but there can be a lot of circumstances where using perhaps the brand color that isn't the one you would use all the time, the one that you could then use as a pop-out standout, or using something completely opposite to that to really make it pop. Okay, and you've got obviously different types of colors there as well. I'm going to show you an example of what Terry was mentioning in just a minute. So we've got to think about designing for color blindness, and that's where this contrast comes into play as well. So if hang on, let me skip forward a slide. Hang on, close your eyes, everyone. Don't look at these bits. I'll show you this in a second. There it was. Let me skip to here. So this is what Terry was mentioning about the heat map. So this is from an artificial intelligence system that we have access to. It's not specifically built for email, but if we take that preview pane area that people may see, we can start to understand how they might engage with that top section of the email before they scroll down or open it fully. Now, what we can see in this one is that that call to action button is getting very lost within this top section. Okay, so we're drawing them into the information and, you know, when the webinar is happening, that's good, but we're losing the call to action button. And the call to action button is a very similar color, as it's faded in this email picture on the screen, very similar color to the background. So maybe if we had gone for a bright red button on the blue background instead, maybe that would have been better. These are the things we can then use as a hypothesis to then test going forward. And then we can make adaptations to your individual branded modular template so that we've got those learnings captured going forward. Okay, so color is really important, and we need to start thinking about this as we start looking at our results and testing. I'm going to skip back quickly. Okay, so does that make sense in terms of that section and some of the elements that you'd want to be looking out for? Brilliant. Now, I know we're coming up against time, aren't we? So I'm very quickly just going to walk you through the email analytics section. So this is what you will see when I send you a summary report from Marketo. We can get basic reports out of Marketo. On the top left, you've got the number of emails that were delivered and the percentage underneath that. So that's of the email sent, how many got through to the receiving email client and didn't bounce. Okay, so on this one, we had just under a 3% bounce rate. That's okay. We can live with that. That's okay. Any more than that, we want to start looking at data quality. Okay, Then you can see when your emails were opened over time. So from when they were sent in the first half an hour, 2 hours, and so on. So you can see where those opens are happening, how many opens there were, how many clicks there were. So those are those individual metrics of the number sent. And then you've got your click to open, as we talked about earlier. Okay, so of the people that opened, how many people clicked through? And that gives you your percentage there. So that's how engaged were they with your content and layout. Unsubscribes, people clicked your unsubscribe link, and just ignore that bit because it's just a weird bit that Marketo puts in. It doesn't really mean much to us at the moment because of the way we're doing our lists. So ignore that metric on the left, okay? So that's your general summary report. What you will also see in your reports is a breakdown of the different devices that we use to open that email. So this is additional information that we bring in from another system, and it really gives you an idea of whether you're looking at desktop devices or mobile devices, which helps our designs going forward as well, of course. And what we can and can't do in terms of design, because Outlook is just a pain. You've also got that summary there just showing you overall if it's desktop, which is the left-hand one, web, which is the middle number, or mobile, which is the right-hand number. So it gives you that really clear breakdown so you can see what devices people are using. And then you've got the really interesting one, which is read rate. So this is all about how long are people staying in your emails? So how engaged are they with your emails? Now, we can set these times differently for different types of email, because a newsletter, you're going to want people to stay in longer than you would a webinar email before they click through. But it tells you on the left the percentage of people who read the email, so stayed in it for between 9 and 20 seconds in this case. All the way down, you've got your skim, so 3 to 8 seconds, and then your glanced or deleted, 0 to 2 seconds. Okay, so it shows you how engaged people are with that content. So really interesting metric there. So what we want to be looking at is what is happening with these emails over time. We also want to compare certain emails together. So webinar emails, because they're a similar type, we can compare them together. I've put together some general stats for you all so you can see what's happened over the first half of this year so far for each of the different teams. Here you've got delivery rate, which is the bars, and that's shown on the left-hand side, and the number of emails sent, which is the red and shown on the right-hand side. Okay. So delivery rates are looking pretty good. There's some a little bit lower than I would like, but that's mostly the HEP and Inflam ones, which we don't do too much of, and obviously Inflam have gone now, so we don't need to worry about those. The rest of you are all looking pretty good, so I'm pretty happy in terms of
sorry, Kate, why would the delivery rate be lower? Is it because the emails are bouncing out because they're wrong, or?
That's exactly
this is my
it.
first surgery. Yeah.
So no, sorry. So when emails are sent, when they get to the receiving email client, they're either accepted, which would then be your delivery rate, or they hard bounce, which is exactly like you said. The email doesn't exist, never going to exist. It just needs to be removed. Or they've soft bounced, which is a temporary failure. So it could be that someone's mailbox is full, for example. So you wouldn't remove those straight away, and the system all does this for us. We try those for X number of times before they're then removed from the system. So yes, it's all about what's happening with those emails as they reach whichever provider it is that they're going to.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'd need to, if it went down, I'd be looking at, is it hard bounces? Is it soft bounces? If it's hard bounces, it's data collection. There's something happening when those emails are being collected that they're being entered wrongly, and we'd need to look into that in more detail. Yeah. Okay, and then we've got everybody's open rates, your average open rates. So this is across all your email types for the different teams. Ignore the Inflam one because it was a consent email as they moved over, so don't worry about that one too much. But so far, we have the liver team and the HIV team pretty much neck and neck at 18 and 18.26%, and the rest of you certainly aren't that far behind at all. So it's a pretty close race. So let's see what we can do in the second half and who can inch ahead with their open rates. And then again, we've got our click rates on the right-hand side, which are the blue bars, and our click to open rate, so that more in-depth metric, which is the red ones on there as well. And you'll all get access to these slides, so you can go in and have a look. And I can talk you through them in each of our individual meetings as well.
Hey, can I ask a question just about the open rates?
Of course you can.
What would be the best that you could hope for? Because I look at that and go, bit disappointing, only there's less than 1 in 5 are opening emails. So I mean, I know we get better open rates of like Viva approved emails that's coming from the reps, but for Marketo, what would you anticipate we should be striving for?
Okay, so in terms of a metric, all I would say is anything higher than you are now. The best benchmark is against what you're doing now. I think in terms of thinking about your audience, thinking about the way we're sending at the moment, I think you're all in a pretty good, pretty average position, but I think there's a lot we can do to improve that. So I think, looking at your strategies, what we're sending, when we're sending, who we're sending it to, is certainly going to help us to improve those open rates. We can do some subject line testing, absolutely. But I think it's definitely going to come down to that strategy element. So in terms of numbers, I mean, HIV on 18%, not too bad. I'd like to see everyone closer to 20%, maybe 25%. That would be where I'd like to see you guys at.
Do you know what the industry average is? Because sometimes you think, is it something that we're doing in Gilead that other companies are doing better or tweaking? I just wondered whether, what I'd like to know what we're striving for, I guess.
Yeah, so usually when these results put pharmaceutical in, they usually put kind of all of, like the small chemists and things like that in. So I think they'd be pretty skewed in terms of your specific industry, but I can certainly pull out some average rates for similar industries for you for the next surgery, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think Arlene's put 20% in the chat. I don't know what's behind that, Arlene.
I don't know.
So, 20% is if you're sending an email broadcast across different industries. You wouldn't want to do like for like. You just want to do how email performs across different industries. So even if you were to look at healthcare versus B2B versus education or other industries, average is anywhere between 20 to 25. On opens.
So I was bang on then. There we go. That's certainly where I would like to see you guys being. But I think that as we get into this process now, everyone's getting emails out. That's brilliant. Now we can go to that next step and start to really think about who are we sending these emails to? Can we do some segmentation here? Is it appropriate? The more we can do that, we'll get better open rates. But what I will say is it's not all about your open rates. And if you want people to just open your emails and read them, brilliant. Open rate is a good metric. And I'm going to tell you why it's not a great metric in a minute. But in all honesty, I would start to some extent trying to ignore your open rates. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why in about 2 slides time. I'm almost there. Start thinking about what is it that you wanted people to do. So click rates and open to click rates are much better metrics to be looking at, and anything obviously we can track further on. Now, the reason for this is there are multiple reasons, and one of them is to do with Apple. So you may have seen recently with the new update on iOS 14, there's some new privacy settings that have come into place. Now, this at the moment affects online advertisers. So if you were doing Facebook ads, for example, it impacts the tracking on your Facebook ads because people can say, no, we don't want Facebook to track us. Okay. But what's going to happen is the next release, which is due to come out at the end of this year, will block opens. Okay, so if somebody is opening their emails on a mobile device, unless they say yes to it, those opens are going to be blocked. You won't be able to track those. Okay, so this is coming later this year. Now, in all honesty, open rate has never been a good metric. If somebody opens an email and doesn't turn on images, you don't register an open. If somebody receives the text-only version of your email, so on the old Blackberries or on an Apple Watch, for example, you don't register an open. So there are a lot of instances that open rate won't register anyway, and this is certainly going to compound that. So we all need to start thinking about deeper metrics. We need to go deeper than open rate. Open rate, we can look at it and go, okay, right, we can see what's happening here, but it's got to be deeper metrics going forward. Don't panic, everyone, though, okay? Because opens have never been really reliable. I know that the majority of companies around the planet love to look at opens, but we really do need to take them with a pinch of salt, particularly as we go forward this year, and really think about what did we want someone to do? You know, if we want someone to read that email, let's look at our read rates. How long did people stay in that email? Did we achieve our goal of getting them to digest that information? Did we get them to click through? So let's look at those deeper metrics. There we go. Everyone okay? Is everyone, no one's in open rate shock, are they? Is everyone all right? Was that helpful? Was it useful? Did it give you some thoughts on what to be looking for?
Yeah, really useful, Kate. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I know most of you aren't writing the copy, for example, but you know, when you're looking at these things, start to think, are we drawing people down? Are we hitting all of these points? Any other questions? I'm here.
And just, do you share the slides afterwards, Kate?
Yes, so I will share the slides, but what we do is, so we put them on a landing page. All the videos and all the slides from all the surgeries this year are on there. So have a look and see if there's anything interesting. You guys fast forward to the interesting bits and the teaching bits or what have you. But yeah, everything will be on that landing page and sent out.
I think, Kate, for next time, it would also be really good if you could really close the loop on the analytics. So
Yep.
show them the open rates, the click to open rates, and then what happens on GA as well. And that way you tell the full story from start to finish.
We can do
And I
that
think
for
it'd be
you,
really good.
Arlene. Most
Yeah.
people aren't using GA, so let's look at one of yours and see if we can
Yeah.
do it for you, and we use you as a little case study. That would be brilliant. Okay, you volunteered yourself.
No problem.
Thank you, Arlene. Okay. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. You've got contact details there if you need anything, and we'll be on the surgery again in a month's time.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.